As you know very well, in the last weeks, Polish politics and political debates around Poland have been dominated by the issue of the memory legislation, the history law, which is clearly problematic. My organization, the Never Again Association, has been publicly critical of this legislation. But what I think is actually way more important currently, and more alarming and more problematic, is the current wave of anti-Semitic sentiment in Polish media and politics, including mainstream media and mainstream politics. We can go into details of this particular piece of legislation, but I would rather omit it for now, because well, the formulation is rather imprecise. It is open to interpretations, and it is obviously controversial in itself. But I would repeat, what is more alarming today, in my view, is the kind of discourse that has accompanied this discussion in Poland since late January. And on a personal note, I can tell you, well, I was aware of the existence of anti-Semitism in Poland for a long time. I can tell you this topic for more than 20 years, not least through publishing this magazine, Never Again, for more than 20 years. So the existence of anti-Semitism in Poland didn't surprise me at all. But what did surprise me is the scale of the anti-Semitic discourse, the explosion of anti-Semitic discourse in Poland in the last couple of weeks. And I never thought I would live to witness something on that scale. As a sociologist, I would say the social norm has shifted, but it has shifted very rapidly in a matter of...
Rafał is louder?
Even louder. So, okay, it has shifted in a matter, thank you, it has shifted in a matter of weeks, if not days, in a rather dramatic way. Do I have to repeat everything I said already?
No.
Thank you. Well, obviously, how that happened, there had been some ready-made prejudice that was widespread, but it was definitely activated, and the activation of anti-Semitic prejudice, anti-Semitic stereotypes in public discourse happened largely due to political decisions in the last weeks, decisions on the level of political leadership, including leadership of the ruling party. Until recently, we had one member of parliament who openly, regularly used anti-Semitic statements. Robert Winnicki, the leader of the nationalist movement, Ruch Narodowy, the sister party to Jobbik. His catchphrase is, "We don't want Poland to become a Jewish Disneyland." But he was more or less the only one until January this year. Well, since late January, I am afraid we have had hundreds of statements, hundreds of examples. Statements made by politicians, by members of parliament, by commentators on state media. And I don't have time, and I don't wish to read out the hundreds of examples I have, but I will read just 2 or 3, if you allow me. So, Mrs. Zalewska is deputy speaker of Polish parliament, but she also happens to be the official spokesperson of the ruling party. Excuse me, yes, sorry, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Is that correct? She wrote on Twitter, from now on, it will be difficult for me to look at Jews with friendship and sympathy. And she was quoting Father Zieliński, who said it state television. Mrs. Zalewska is the Minister of Education, who actually had other problematic statements earlier on, but it is not the same person. Thank you. Jacek Żalek is the deputy chairman of the ruling party faction in the Polish parliament. He said on television, if the Poles are held responsible for the Jedwabne pogrom, then one might conclude that if the Jewish police was responsible for leading Jews to the gas chambers, then the Jews themselves created the Holocaust for themselves. Mr. Zybertowicz is a leading advisor to the President of Poland. He often speaks in mainstream media. He said in an interview, a long interview on the pages of the Polish edition of the Times newspaper, the brutal treatment, anti-Polonism in Israel results from the feeling of shame and the passivity of the Jews during the Holocaust. It's a form of compensation. The brutal treatment of the Palestinians and the Hezbollah is also a form of the compensation. Earlier they experienced the trauma of humiliation, and now, perhaps in line with their chutzpah tradition, they compensate. Many Jews engaged in denunciation, collaboration during the war. I think Israel has still not worked it through. I wonder if this political and symbolic attack of Israel on Poland and Poles is not, apart from all else, a smokescreen against remembering how they behaved in the face of the Holocaust. They were passive, they collaborated, and the Jewish elites from the east coast of the USA, having learned from the Poles about what was going on in the concentration camps, behaved passively. But as a Pole, I don't agree for Israel to conduct its reckoning with history at the expense of our country. In this dispute, one can see clearly Israel is fighting to keep the monopoly on the Holocaust. The religion of the Holocaust has become a symbolic shield for that country, which is used by Israel to create for itself a special position in many places in the world. A shield which is meant to protect Israel against any criticism. And now Israel is afraid that Poland will destroy its monopoly of the Holocaust. End of quote. Well, the President's office explained he was not speaking for the President when he gave his interview. But he was not censored for it in any way. And I was on a panel with Mr. Zybertowicz a week after that interview, and I said to him publicly, I think your comments were astonishing, and I thought it was a chance for him to withdraw them, but he more or less repeated everything, which surprised me even more. Yesterday some of you may have seen reports on the interview given by Colonel Morawiecki. I would say it is less important he is the father of the Prime Minister. We cannot assume the son is responsible for the opinions of the father. But what is important is the fact that Colonel Morawiecki is a significant political figure in his own right. He was one of the main leaders of the radical wing of the Solidarity movement in the 80s. He's the leader of the political party in Polish parliament today, Freedom and Solidarity, and he's a widely respected figure in Polish politics. And just yesterday, he says, "Do you know who chased the Jews away to the Warsaw Ghetto? The Germans, you think? No, the Jews themselves went because they were told that there would be an enclave, that they would not have to deal with those nasty Poles. Who sent Jews to the Umschlagplatz? Did the Germans do it? No. The Jewish police were on the Umschlagplatz," and so on and so on. And like I said, I actually have hundreds of statements like that from mainstream media, mainstream politics, which in my view is it's a bigger problem now than the legislation that is usually mentioned. Okay, enough of those examples. But I have something else. Just coming here, I brought some samples of Polish magazines from the couple of weeks. And I just want to show you some covers. This one asks, why would Jews apologize to the Poles? This one says, attack on Poland. I'm not sure you can see the image. This one has the image of the Israeli ambassador to Poland, and it talks about the battle on the legislation. This one says they want to break us, and I think you can recognize some of the faces. This one talks about the Polish-Israeli war and who will win. So this is the kind of discourse we are experiencing every day. Some of those magazines are significant magazines, not French publications. But just the last thing, I thought it was symbolic. Coming here in the morning, the day before yesterday, I saw something in the Warsaw airport that surprised me, and it was this book. I don't know how many of you will have heard about the author, Douglas Reed, but he was one of the early Holocaust deniers, and it is actually openly. It's an openly anti-Semitic Holocaust denying publication, which of course does not represent any official view on history, but still I didn't buy it in some far-right bookshop. I bought it at the Warsaw Airport, which surprised me. The bookshop is actually operated by Virgin, a British company, which is also interesting. My last remark would be that, as so often in history, this is not just about the Jews. As you know well, the Jewish community in Poland is very small today. But this is all linked to a more general crisis of democratic values in Poland. And I was really thinking maybe I should say something positive to conclude, but it's not that easy. But I would say I would say what is maybe positive about the Polish situation now is the fact that there are civil society initiatives such as Never Again Association and others that oppose anti-Semitism in Poland today, and that's good to know. Thank you.